Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Carl Steinbeck here. Just wanted to cover some of the latest updates on the Donna Adelson murder case there in Tallahassee, Florida. Donna Adelson, the 75-year-old who's a co-accused in the murder of FSU law professor Dan Markel, who was a professor there before he was gunned down in his garage. And the convicted perpetrators we have so far include the hitman, the middleman for the hitman, Charlie Adelson's girlfriend, Charlie Adelson, a dentist who was the son of this Donna Adelson. He's already been convicted, facing life without parole. So I've been advocating for more Adelsons to be arrested starting 2.5 years ago. And this channel covered this exclusively almost this whole time before I started to branch off in a couple other cases. So the Karen Reed case I've started covering recently. So this one looks like it was going to be possibly running into a overlap with the Karen Reed case, but as it turns out, there was a motion for a continuance filed. That was filed when was it April 21st, and so there was a hearing on it this past Wednesday. So let's go ahead and jump to that, and we'll do a play-by-play of that hearing.
Motion to continue that was filed on April 21st. I try to make my arguments as clear.
This is Donna Adelson's attorneys there. She is not there in the courtroom, but they would have her on via Zoom. This is Josh Zellman, one of her attorneys, and the other one is Fulford, the lady on his left.
As possible in the written pleadings. What has come out about 3 weeks ago is the state conducted this additional investigation into allegations. As part of that, they obtained additional records. We also learned approximately 2 weeks ago during Investigator Newland's deposition that the state had not given us materials that had been given to prior counsel. So we've been asked to trust without the ability to verify. And in
those of you not following this case is really bizarre. It's very outrageous. Both the murder plot would involve so many people involved. This dentist family that also had a lawyer named Wendy as their daughter. So Charlie, one of the sons, is a periodontist, and then the daughter Wendy, their only daughter, is a lawyer. And so they had this murder plot to get rid of Dan Markel because Dan wouldn't agree to move to Miami where the grandparents were and Wendy were. So rather than have split distance between them, they decided to close the distance. And if Dan Markel didn't agree to move to Florida, basically the decision was to go ahead and kill him. That way you get immediate custody of the kids, and there's no other custody issues whatsoever, because Donna really wanted to be around her grandsons, who she called her sunshines.
In fact, months ago, I asked the state for a list of the materials, everything that they had, everything that Corbett had, so that we knew if we had received everything. And they did not provide that to us. So now we have received, from the materials we received over the last few weeks, it appears to be over 100,000 emails. We have purchased 3 pieces of software in addition to the software that we used previously, trying to...
Is this to sort through or sift the emails?
Some of it's to open it, some of it's to sort through. Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
None of them are very effective at doing that. So we've actually engaged a e-discovery platform to assist us, but that hasn't even been set up yet. That was a decision that we made last night after trying that additional piece of software yesterday. In addition to that, we have new cell write extractions from Mrs. Adelson's phone. I understand in the state's response to the motion to continue that they don't intend to use any of that, but that doesn't mean that there's not something in there that we want to use.
And I did want clarification on that point. As to the discovery provided to prior counsel, Ms. Dugan, the response of the state is that on October 31st and November 8th, the raw data from the defendant's phone and email accounts were provided. Is that correct? Is that what your response is getting to?
Is this concerning, can you tell me what?
Just the raw data from the defendant's phone and email accounts?
Yes, sir. Those have all been previously provided.
Keep in mind, this family down there, they lived in a high rise in Miami. Their daughter lived close also to them in South Beach area, also expensive condo. And they had, around the time the murder happened, they had like over $8 million in their wealth. And they go hire a couple thugs off the street, and they drove all the way up to Tallahassee to gun down Professor Markel as he's pulling into his garage. And they thought they could get away with that despite all the videotape that there is on somebody driving on the tollway going up and back from Tallahassee to Miami. So plus driving down the street and expecting all this to happen and get away with it is really brazen and really idiotic. But that's what they pulled off. And there was a long delay in this. Think about it. This happened over 10 years ago. And Donna Adelson hasn't even been brought to trial yet. The prosecution was very timid to go after this rich, wealthy family, but they delayed it. And finally, they arrested the dentist's son. And within days of his conviction, then they decided to go after Donna, his mom. But there was so much evidence against all the Adelsons of Florida that they really should have gone after them all at one time, or at least in a daisy chain approach that's very short in sequence, like maybe charge them all within 3 to 6 month window. So anyway, I've been critical about the charging aggressiveness or lack thereof, I should say, and the inability for them to properly size up the case and realize how good they have it. Because let me tell you, when Charlie Adelson went to trial, it was such a slam dunk win. His testimony was an absolute hysterical joke. The way he thought he was coming across as credible, and anyway, it was just one of the most overwhelming cases of guilt you could ask for in a murder case, and yet the state didn't. They held off on over 8 years before they brought him to trial. So anyway, they're finally going after his mother here, but there's others as well that they haven't gone after yet. So hopefully that's going to change here in the near future.
I thought he was talking about the 100.
We're going to get to the filter team documents. The best way to do this is to take it into bite-sized pieces so it's clear what is being argued, what is not.
Yes, sir. So it's my understanding that all of Mrs. Adelson's phone records were previously provided in November 2024. There were certain phone records, I believe it was 7 pages of phone records that were actually, this is going to be paragraph 7 of the defense's reply to the response. These are phone records that Donna Adelson's prior defense counsel had an issue with us not having. So these were subpoenaed. TPD received them in October of 2024. The state attorney's office didn't know TPD had received them. TPD didn't know that we didn't have them. And so that's why.
This is Sarah Dugan. She was the second chair on the murder case of Dan Markel. She did not do any of the previous trials that happened to get the middle person, Katie McBanmaw, or the 2 hitmen. One of the hitmen pled out and agreed to testify against the others, and he got a light sentence of like 18 years. And the one that actually pulled the trigger did get life without parole. They tried the death penalty, but the jury came back with life without parole. So he's been convicted, and the middle person's convicted. The dentist who hired the hitman via Katie McBanwell, he's been convicted. They're now waiting to get Donna, and they're going to go and circle back. I'm expecting to get Donna's husband, Harvey, also a dentist who had his own practice, as well as the daughter, Wendy Adelson, the lawyer.
They weren't disclosed, but ultimately they have now been sent to the defense.
Another term you start to hear sort of thrown around a little bit more by
Ultimately, though,
Go ahead.
yes, sir. I'm told it's 7 pages of records. So those were the 7 pages that they did not have, that weren't disclosed to them last fall. That's my understanding. And we would object to a continuance based on those pages.
All right, as to any additional raw data from either your
This Judge Everett, he was new to the case when he came on the Charlie Adelson case, and he presided over that. He's a really highly respected judge. He's very competent. He's a no-nonsense kind of guy, but he also has a sense of humor. But so he's back on this case. He also won Jurist of the Year not too long ago after he had decided that case. And let's go on here.
client's phone or email accounts, are these not in your possession at this point?
We have them, but that's the materials that we've been struggling to try to get through.
And again, this was disclosed back in October and November, or when did you receive it?
We did not receive those materials, Your Honor, until it was after, if Your Honor recalls, during the
So they're talking about discovery here, and the defense is saying, hey, we got stuff late, and they're making reasons why they're not prepared to go to trial in June.
expedited hearing that we had a couple of weeks ago by telephone with the state and defense on the phone. Those were the records that we were addressing then, and I believe that we got those. April 10th, 2025. And that's, the state actually acknowledges that in their response.
All right, Mr. Zeldin, you're not going to make your argument for you, but
Yeah, I tell you what, if we had Judge Everett up there doing the Karen Reed trial, we wouldn't have had a mistrial that first trial. It should have been not guilty. They wouldn't have had this rigged jury system set up the way they did.
ultimately you believe you need to review these to be prepared for trial itself.
Yes, and those aren't the only issues that have arisen over the last few weeks. The motion details the additional issues. But needless to say, we have spent the last 3 weeks trying to collect this material, some of which we still don't have.
You're referring to the recent investigation.
Yes,
Go ahead.
and even if the state isn't going to use the information, we still need to know the extent to which they violated, they intercepted and monitored attorney-client communications and communications that are protected by the fiduciary client privilege. We don't have all of that information yet, and they have not responded, as indicated in my reply yesterday. The state hasn't responded to those emails requesting that information.
Ms. Dugan,
Yes, sir.
concerning the aspect of the recent investigation, which materials are yet to be provided and why?
Yes, sir. May I also address the
Yeah, the judge, he's really, what happened was Donna Adelson was supposed to go to trial like almost a year ago. And the day of trial, there was a conflict that came up because the same lawyer that represented Charlie Adelson and his trial, Donna hired for her trial. And the day of trial, when they're supposed to start jury selection, Charlie suddenly says, well, I don't want the same lawyer representing mom also. So the whole thing got derailed. I'd been talking the whole time he was on this case, as Daniel Roshbaum, as attorney for 2 co-defendants in a murder case, that is basically a real huge issue for appeal, and it can be reversible error. It would be reversible error because there's too many issues of conflicts, and you have a constitutional right to conflict-free counsel. So on appeal, I was guaranteeing that this would be raised and her conviction would be thrown out because of this. But as it turns out, it finally came to a head before the trial started, right before the morning of trial. And so that's why she has these 2 new lawyers that she probably spent an extra cool $1 million on. And anyway, so this got the trial delayed again. And so as of right now, she's been there since November, a year and a half ago. So she's been there about 18 months in pretrial jail there in Leon County Jail, a nasty place to be. And now her attorneys are asking to have her stay there even longer.
100,000 emails.
Go ahead.
Okay. So those 100,000 emails are redacted privileged communications that the defense recently received that occurred between the Adelsons and prior counsel. This communication was redacted by a taint team. It's never been seen by the prosecution.
The filter team document
Yes,
you're
sir,
referring
thank you,
to.
filter team. It's never been seen.
That's what they do. If they know there's attorney-client privilege intercepts, they wall that off from the prosecutors. And so there's no chance of there being any kind of corruption of that and advantage gained by peeking behind what the lawyers are saying to Donna Adelson. So that's normal type of thing that they do on wiretaps.
By the prosecution, it's obviously privileged. We obviously do not intend to use it in our case, having never seen it. And I also can't imagine a scenario where the defense would be using it in their case. I would feel like all of that information would be hearsay and self-serving hearsay. So the state is objecting to a continuance based on their needing to review all of the privileged communications with prior counsel.
When were the filter team documents provided?
They were provided on April 10th during, one second, I want to double check. During Jason Newland's deposition by this defense team. Somehow, some question was asked where he referred to the filter team that the court referenced. And this defense team was not aware that the filter team had gone through all of those emails and kept all of the privileged emails from the prosecution team and provided them to former defense counsel. So those were then provided to this defense team.
Well, what's interesting is that this also brings up the issue of the conflict because this had to do with prior conflicted counsel, and they want to see what communication was intercepted. Then the prior counsel is tainted. So if this counsel gets access to that, then they are tainted as well. And so she still has conflicted counsel.
Very well.
And Your Honor, I could address that very briefly. Judge, advice of counsel is something that would be relevant. It goes to Mrs. Adelson's state of mind. And if there are any emails in the records that we received 2 weeks ago that would rise to that level, then it would absolutely be relevant and admissible if it goes to her state of mind concerning, for example, her leaving the country.
Well, this is all a huge mess because the prosecution really dropped the ball. They should have realized as soon as Dan was saying he was representing Donna, they should have raised a motion to get him kicked off the case. And when this all panned out where Rashbaum had to recuse himself and the whole trial went sideways, they couldn't even start the trial. The district attorney, the state attorney, I should say, Jack Campbell goes on a press conference and said, well, we have no ability to interfere with who somebody chooses as their lawyer. And I've been saying all along, yes, you do. And I cited a Supreme Court case that gives judges the authority to do that. And so they don't even know the law there. The state attorney's office didn't even know the law. And then some days later, Judge Everett cites a motion saying that other people that are on the team that didn't recuse himself, like Daniel Rashbaum, they were conflicted as well. So he got rid of the entire defense team network of lawyers that Donna Adelson had using that Supreme Court case that I had cited. And so she had to start totally from scratch. So what this attorney is talking about is, as I understand, he's trying to do a reach back and get some of that data that they found in these emails with previous counsel. So he's basically trying to say, let me try to get this current team tainted again. Well, if there is a taint, guess what? It's going to be reversible error again because the conflict is bleeding over into the new lawyer. So this thing's really a hot mess. But it's somewhat what the defense attorneys are trying to do is create a conflict because then Donna will have her case busted on appeal. But she's 75 years old and she's already been there a year and a half. So by asking for a continuance, I mean, this thing, she'll be in there for over 2 years, I think, before this thing gets to trial.
I was going to say, particularly as to that issue, what advice she received and what she relied upon in making that decision. That would be up to the finder of fact to determine, was she relying on the advice of counsel or was she in fact trying to flee? The emails, though.
Okay, the state of mind because Donna was arrested as her and her husband Harvey were trying to flee for Vietnam. They actually arrested her right before she was boarding the plane. Somebody gave law enforcement a tip, and they had to scramble to get the arrest warrant done because they didn't even have that prepared to have her arrested right after Dan, her son Charlie, got convicted of murder. That should have been done years before. So anyway, this shows how slow to justice this outfit is there in Tallahassee.
And your client does not have to testify, but ultimately this would go to how would the emails themselves be admitted versus her giving her recollection or recitation of those.
Well, they have the Markel family, Professor Dan Markel's families. The surviving sons have pretty much been kept away from the family tree of Dan Markel, and that's what's really an outrage of this whole thing, is a plan to cut Dan off and basically exterminate the Markels from any contact. Granted, there's been some contact over the years, but these grandsons don't really know the grandparents much at all.
That still doesn't mean that the emails themselves would not be admissible, Your Honor.
Let's put a pin in that. That
Yes,
would be subject to any.
So they're trying to see emails between maybe Dan Roshbaum and Donna about advice. She talked about how Dan Roshbaum had said, "Well, you might, if you want to leave the country, I don't know if you'll make it out, but there's only one way to find it out, and that's if you try to leave, because there's not a warrant for you at the time, a warrant for your arrest." So she made a decision to flee and then got arrested right as she, like I say, trying to board the plane.
Argument in the future
Yes,
as to how the emails themselves could be admissible. But if your client chooses to take the stand during the trial and waives any prior privilege with Mr. Roshbaum or anyone else concerning advice that she received on leaving the country, that is certainly up to her.
yes, sir.
Back to the recent investigation discovery, Ms. Dugan, the items that have not been provided, I believe some of these pertain to the parameters in the Title III that we're supposed to operate as safeguards. Is there a reason this has not been provided to the defense?
So looking at the reply and the motion to compel, all of the things that they are requesting here as far as the minimization instructions, all the logs, all of those things, I feel once the order to unseal has been signed, those can all be disclosed. The only thing that I saw that would be additional that they are asking for is surveillance video, which is surveillance video from the jail, which I've been told has already been disclosed to the defense. They also asked for the financial records that are mentioned in the application. I was told that we subpoenaed Harvey Adelson's Zelle account. I found that those Zelle records and had it sent to the defense this afternoon.
Wow, so they just had recent information on Harvey, the patriarch of the family, Dr. Harvey. So he's not able to see his wife locally. His wife, Donna, is up there in Tallahassee, and he's still down in South Florida. And their daughter, Wendy, Dan Markel's ex-wife, she moved to Austin not too long ago, Austin, Texas. So Harvey's down there in Miami by himself now.
So once those items are unsealed and they can be disclosed to the defense, that should be all of the discovery that pertains to the wire.
Please provide the order. Has the defense been able to take a look at it?
No, sir. Let me show them what I have, and if I need to change anything, I'll happy to.
Now, Harvey's not arrested yet. Neither is Wendy. Wendy's got to testify. She was forced to testify
May I approach?
You may.
3 times now.
And, Your Honor, there was one
Oh, no, sorry.
issue that Ms. Dugan and I addressed concerning the motion and order, and it has to do with the
Yeah, I don't ask for subs or likes or any money. If you have any money, I don't send me any. Just give it to the Karen Reed Defense Fund, please.
discrepancy with Investigator Newland's memorandum, the 17-page memorandum. The memorandum that he authored indicated that the wire went down February 24th. Ms. Dugan is telling me that the wire actually went down on February 21st. So if we can just make sure that that's accurate.
Yes,
What about
this
the
is
wire
one of the paragraphs in the defense's reply. That was just a mistake on the memo. The wire came down on the 21st. I believe the significance of the 24th was that was when the order was signed, and I think Mr. Newland's memo said the 24th, but it is the 21st, which is reflected in the order the court's looking at now.
All right. Court will sign the order at this time. I believe that deals with your motion to compel, Mr. Zellman.
May I address one more thing about the issue we were just talking about? There is obviously this new discovery from this lead that the state was alerted to last fall. We conducted this investigation and followed that investigation to its conclusion. That obviously has resulted in some new discovery in these wire calls, but I did want to let the court know.
Yeah, Dan Markel, the professor, he was from Canada, and that's where all his family resides now. His parents, and he's got a sister, Shelley, as well, that lives up there with her, I think 3 kids. But the sons of Dan Markel, they still have not been to Canada to see their father's grave. Isn't that a shocker? How cruel is that?
Though there are a large number of calls that the defense, of course, wants to review, there are only, I was told, about 30-something calls deemed pertinent by law enforcement, and the state likely plans to only use maybe 1 or 2 at trial, and believes that the 2 months the defense had from the time it was discovered to the time of trial in June should be sufficient to prepare for that portion of the trial.
Do any of the calls that you intend to use from this recent investigation go to privileged matters or encapsulate calls with counsel?
Thank you. I wanted to address that. There are no calls that were recorded between the defendant, Donna Adelson, and attorneys in this case. I specifically asked the investigator about that before the hearing.
Mr. Zellman, you may continue with your argument.
Yes, Your Honor. The state has also not responded to our request to let us know if they've also been monitoring our attorney-client conferences at the Leon County Detention Center.
That's a no.
And
That'd be something that he'd be freaking out about. Have you guys been listening to what we're talking about?
although the state believes that we're going to have enough time, I calculated this. There are over 32 hours of calls that were captured on that wire. And given the amount of materials that we have just been handed.
32 hours of the wiretap. That's what they got. That's a lot of phone calls in a couple week period that they found relevant.
We have not had an opportunity to review even 2 hours of those calls up to this point. Your Honor, just because the state believes that there's going to be enough time for us to prepare, and it's not 2 months, it's more like 6 weeks. There's not enough time for us to analyze this new information, synthesize it, prepare appropriate motions. We've spent the last 3 weeks dealing with this as opposed to finalizing the motions in limine.
That is an important point you bring up. essentially between what has been recently investigated and what the charges have been of murder, solicitation, and conspiracy from the time your client is charged, there are essentially two different pots, if you will. For the motions that the deadline was today as to the murder, solicitation, and also the last count as well, are those motions completed?
No, Your Honor, we've only had an opportunity to finish 2 additional motions that have not yet been filed. And I have not had an opportunity, because we had to adjourn Investigator Newland's deposition, to finish the Frank's motion.
Right? So you are in fact,
Boy, these lawyers sound really behind the ball here. They got 6 weeks to go, and they still haven't filed all their motions in limine. It's not looking very good.
and asking for an extension on the deadline to file your motions.
We're going to need one in addition to the continuance. Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Dugan?
The judge looks so down about this case. I mean, he's anything with Adelson, he's completely fed up. This whole thing with Dan Roshbaum thinking he could represent 2 attorneys. The judge didn't know, like the prosecution, they didn't know that Dan Roshbaum was representing Donna for several years before he went and was hired by Charlie Adelson. So the judge didn't know that. And I don't know if he would have known that, hey, wait a minute, you got this guy who's been representing Donna for years, is now suddenly representing Charlie. What if she gets arrested and prosecuted for the same crime? Then we got a real issue of a conflict that's going to raise its ugly head. So he didn't have that kind of foreknowledge. And he also didn't know that whether she was going to be charged or not. The prosecution, on the other hand, they knew all that. And so they never alerted the judge to that because they didn't even understand the law on conflict. That's what's really been upsetting about this whole thing. They don't even understand the law of conflicts that's universal across the United States in federal courts.
If the court wants to give an extended motion deadline, we don't have any objection to that. We do object to a continuance of the trial and remain ready for trial.
What is the defense? Well, before I come back to you, Mr. Zellman, what is the prejudice that the state would suffer if the trial is continued, Ms. Dugan?
We would not
Beyond just a mere objection.
We would not suffer prejudice, Judge. We're just ready for trial if it goes as continued.
Yeah, the prosecution here, they're not strenuously objecting to a continuance. In fact, they don't even have the lead attorney, Georgia Kappelman, there on this case. Sarah Dugan, more than capable in her own right. I think she's actually the best attorney they have there. And so the state's not aggressively fighting a continuance. And you want to have lawyers prepared, and these lawyers don't even sound like they're really prepared, even if it wasn't for this new data dump.
Mr. Zellman, what would you be proposing as a date? And you also have to keep in mind, there's only so many points in the year a trial that could take either 3 weeks or more can be scheduled. And I assume you've discussed with your client if your relief is granted.
We have.
What that means.
We have, Your Honor. And frankly, without getting through all of this new material, it's hard for us to pinpoint exactly when. I mean, we're not going to sit around on our hands and do nothing. We have been diligently preparing. We're going to continue to diligently.
That's the other attorney, last name Fulford, and she's a former judge, and now she's doing criminal practice. So it doesn't look like she's very enthused about being there in the court.
Prepare. Likely 2 to 3 months would be, I think, realistic. But again, until we get through all these new materials, it's going to be hard for me to say.
Right. Concerning the motion deadline, which was supposed to be today, we will set a new deadline, particularly as to the counts that have already been a part of the indictment and have been charged all along. The murder, the conspiracy, the solicitation, the deadline for filing any motions relating to the existing charges will be May 16th. the motion hearing that was scheduled to take place on that day. We will reschedule at a later point. Court is going.
The reason that they have all this new evidence to dump on the defense is because there was this wiretap going on for 32 hours that they have recordings of. And that was just this past February. So they're still actively looking at this case. I assume it was the FBI that did this. The FBI is the one that did a bump, what they call a bump, where they intentionally bumped into Donna on the street and gave her a news clipping showing that Professor Markel was murdered up in Tallahassee, and then made the comments that, hey, we need some money too for my brother who's in jail. You're paying other people, but not my brother. And that I could go on for that for a long time, but suffice it to say that when Charlie hired a hitman through his so-called girlfriend at the time, he never realized that the father of her children who drove up there to do the killing had another accomplice along with him that actually was a trigger man. So they were really confused by this thing, and it got them talking, and they had wiretaps to get their conversation. So anyway, they're still doing wiretaps, which means they're still going after other Adelsons. They wouldn't be doing this wiretaps for Donna's case right months before she's supposed to go to trial. So this is a good sign that they're actively working to get more Adelson arrests of the Florida Adelson clan. I should say, to include former Florida Adelson family member Wendy Adelson. I think that's their main target, and maybe they'll do a dragnet to swoop up Harvey as well. He's now 80 years old, so not sure if his age will make him not a target, but I would really think they would go after anybody involved in this. And him being the leader of the family, you would think that he would be going down with the rest of them.
Going to reserve ruling as to whether the motion for continuance will be granted. The parties are to confer about any redactions that you believe would be appropriate to the filings for the expedited motion for continuance, the state's response, and also the defendant's reply, and the motion to compel discovery. Any other matters that we need to address before we finish up for today?
Your Honor, with respect to the motion to compel, the state has also not provided the disclosures that's required by Rule 3.2201BM concerning the jailhouse informants. We've also moved to compel that material as well.
Give me a moment. I'm just going to bring up the rule.
This judge is not thrilled dealing with these people and their lawyers. I think he still feels burned by this whole Dan Roshbaum fiasco.
So this is 1M, which subsection?
1BM.
1B.
They have no basis to have this judge recused.
Student response.
I'm sorry, Judge.
Donna's on Zoom. They don't bring the defendants over for every hearing, so they'll bring them in via Zoom. Just because of the jail coordination for every time a defendant has a hearing, it's very much a logistical problem. The jail is not attached to the courthouse like it is in a lot of places. So you're talking about having a van to drive them over, and the like I say, logistics of having that many jailers to coordinate all that. It's just easier to go on Zoom.
I'm having trouble getting on the Wi-Fi. Is there?
This is in the discovery rule under the prosecutor's discovery obligation. And I will quote from it.
Thank you.
Whether the state has any material or information that has been provided by an informant witness, including the substance of any statement allegedly made by the defendant about which the informant witness may testify, a summary of the criminal history record of the informant witness, the time and place under which the defendant's alleged statement was made, whether the informant witness has received or expects to receive anything in exchange for his or her testimony, the informant witness's prior history of cooperation in return for any benefit is known to the prosecutor.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. I'm familiar with that rule, but just didn't know all of the different things that we needed to show there. Some of that has already been provided through the.
Yeah, if they wouldn't have gotten this bump and then the wiretap conversation with Donna, I don't think they would have gone after Donna. I don't think they would have felt they had enough information, but Donna's own words what is the main driver to convict her as well.
Recordings. However, as far as her history, any benefit, all of those things, we'll disclose that to the defense as soon as possible.
Please disclose it by Friday of this week by 5 p.m.
Yes, sir. And may I also ask about today is the discovery deadline, which the state is prepared to obviously comply with. As far as though now the order on the continuance maybe being later in the week, would it be okay if we had a discovery deadline of 24 hours from the order, or would you rather keep it for today?
Concerning, again, the charges that have always been in place, the murder, the solicitation, and the conspiracy, is either party seeking more discovery on those charges that has not already been addressed up to this point?
Judge, the issue with complying with today's deadline is we have spent the last 3 weeks dealing with these other issues. We have
Not the motions. I'm saying
Her attorney even looks so tired. I mean, he has no zest or energy or fire in his belly.
are you seeking additional discovery on the indictment charges?
We are not going to be able to meet the deadline to provide the state with our discovery because we have been focused for the last 3 weeks on other issues.
There's really sounds like they're in over their heads.
Ms. Dugan.
The state can comply with the discovery today. I just didn't know if given the possibility of the case being continued later this week, if it were possible to have 24 more hours after that order came out. But if it needs to be today, the state can comply with that. And the state would hope that the defense can comply to or get discovery as quickly as possible to us.
Well, it's a real
Yeah, I think you're right. The emails sound like they're related to back when Rashram was the attorney and when they did the right before they arrested her and she was having conversations. So the prosecution just learned they'd never been turned over to the defense. I mean, are they that clueless? Unbelievable. So I think the wiretaps, though, that were from February, my understanding is that they're from this past February. So that's new stuff to indicate they're going after other Adelsons.
ruling has been made on the continuance of the trial. The court will also address any deadline for discovery as well. For now, please operate as if the deadline remains in place. Wait for the order.
And Judge, I just want to make it very clear, there's no way we're going to be able to get it done, even if we were to work straight through till midnight.
Again, Mr. Zellman, as to that, what can be filed, please do.
Yes, sir.
I will let you know once we have a motion, once the order is on the motion to continue, whether the deadline for everything else related to today's deadline applies as well.
Yes, sir.
We are in recess. For everyone on the Zoom, that is the end of the hearing today.
All right. Well,
Your Honor, the expedited motion to continue.
this is sort of like a sloppy hearing from the defense. They weren't really clear on what they were doing and what they wanted. So it's somewhat hard to make out. All we really see is that new stuff has been submitted to them and they're already behind the 8 ball. They cannot get up to speed to do their normal filing for the trial that's currently scheduled in June. So anyway, this is, yeah, it sounds like they're overwhelmed. So yeah, it just makes me wonder. I said in the beginning, I said, I wonder I question whether even Donna can survive making it to trial. She's done better than I thought she would. She wasn't brought in on the Zoom. I think she was only brought in on the Zoom to watch. They didn't ask her for her opinion on anything. Yeah, that was Fulford, Ms. Fulford, her female attorney. So anyway, I'll do some questions here, Q&As here, and then I'll sign off, and then I'll come back on later tonight. Is my plan anyway to cover some more on Karen Reed. But yeah, so Wendy, she's now living in Austin, Texas. She moved last August, I believe it was July or August. And there's some family members that are here on their side of the family. But there's really limited contact with the boys' grandparents on the Markel side of the house, which is really such a tragedy. And one of the reasons I thought it was so outrageous that this case was being delayed and all that visitation was being delayed. And that burned me up enough that I agreed to start doing a YouTube coverage with my brother. Dr. Reinhardt, you're saying it seems like Donna's lawyers are more realistic than Rashbaum. Donna seems less cocky these days. Do you agree? She seems like she's aged a lot and is sort of wearing down. She still has some feistiness to her though, but I do think these lawyers are sort of in over their heads. I don't think they've probably ever had a murder case like this that's going to have worldwide coverage. So I think that puts a lot of pressure on the defense counsel, and they don't look like they're up to the task, really. They seem like they're worn out and tired. LJ, you're thinking Wendy is understandably nervous about the historical computer discovery at the airport arrests and the search warrants. I would think so. I'm sure they got some good information on that. So there's overwhelming evidence against Donna as well. That's why I was really dismayed that at least bring in Donna and arrest Donna at the same time, try them as co-defendants like they did for the original hitmen. But LJ, you're saying 3 more months of pay for the defense, but I think it's a flat fee. So these attorneys are probably not happy that they got all this extra work to do. Maybe they're going to go back to Donna and say, instead of a flat fee, we do want to renegotiate because this is way more than what we talked about. And they're talking about jailhouse informants as well. So apparently there's more than one. So are there going to be additional charges? We don't know against Donna. I don't think there would be additional charges because this one's taken so long to get off the ground. They can't even get it to trial yet, and they still don't have a trial date. So let me go to look at here. Here's the order continuing the trial. State of Florida versus Donna Adelson, the defendant. This, you can see, is Leon County. It was just filed here May 1st, a couple days ago in the afternoon. So this cause having come before this honorable court on the defendant's expedited motion to continue trial filed April 21st. Court having reviewed the state's response, the defense reply, the arguments the counsel presented during the April 30th, 2025 hearing, and the court being fully advised finds as follows: that the court must afford the defendant an adequate opportunity to investigate in order to prepare a defense. They cite some case law from 2024 of Florida, and then in consideration of other factors set forth in a different case, also for Florida. The defendant has demonstrated good cause for relief shown, and the state has conceded that it will not suffer any prejudice by moving the date of the trial. Therefore, it is hereby ordered to judge that this motion is granted. No further continuance shall be granted without good cause presented. So Judge Everett signed that. Jackie Fulford, yeah, that's her first name. You can see she's on this, as well as Josh Zellman. So that's what we have. It's really bizarre how there's not even a new date yet, and the way the court dates fill up and stuff like that, she may not even be tried this year. So that means Donna Adelson, if she's not tried this year, or at least before the end of November, that means she'll have been essentially languishing in Leon County Jail, and she's currently in a lockdown cell, isolation cell. You talk about mentally getting beat down and wore out, and consider the nasty food she's eating. So that she's getting some form of punishment. Her defense already looks burnt out. They may throw in the towel with this extra load being thrown at them. So snake hips. Well, I think the Adelsons have more money to throw their way. So, like I say, maybe they're going back and say, look, we got all these other records. We did not have this kind of information back when we quoted the rate we're going to charge you. So we need more money. Cough it up. So anyway, it's unbelievable. And I see how Donna, the very thing they did is killed Dan Markel, because instead of them having some additional housing up there in Tallahassee, renting or buying some condo to go visit the grandkids, they thought killing Dan Markel was a solution. That way the kids wouldn't be having to visit and they could just stay in South Beach the whole time. But as it turns out now, she's been in Tallahassee for a year and a half in that stinking rotten jail. So talk about the irony and the punishment she's facing just doing that. And she could have had it so easy there in their high-rise $1.6 million condo there overlooking South Beach. So it's just amazing how much they've fallen from grace there. They had the easy life. And even Harvey, who's not been in jail, he's now living there alone. So think about it. He doesn't have his grandkids living there anymore. He doesn't have his wife living there anymore. Charlie, their dentist's son, he's been convicted, sent away for life. And due to threats on his life, he's now up in a South Dakota prison. So if he wants to see his son, he's got to go to South Dakota, which is not easy to get to from Miami. If he wants to see his daughter, Wendy, she's in Austin. She's not there to look after him. And his wife, Donna, she's up there in Tallahassee jail. It's really talk about basically a curse they put on themselves in doing this hit on Professor Markel, who's a wonderful father to these boys. Yeah, you're saying for smart people, they didn't do things very adeptly. Well, it was all because of Charlie. Charlie was trying to play both sides of the tracks, and he was the one that said, I can take care of this. I can fix it for you. And as it turns out, I mean, it was such a botched murder case. And I think the prosecution, if it wasn't for them being intimidated, all these Adelsons of Florida would have been arrested and prosecuted and convicted by now. Yeah, Sarah Dugan did say no additional charges. So that they just don't want to have time to add in more charges and delay this thing further. They're wanting to get this thing to trial. Yeah, I think the court date would be filled up. I don't know if they'll have room to do it in September. That's why I'm thinking it could be either the very end of the year or next year even. Miss T, I'm very surprised Harvey didn't move to Tallahassee. Yeah, I don't think he has. He's sure on the phone a lot with Donna, but as far as I understand, he still lives there in South Beach. Coffee Cake, how much do these people have, honestly? Well, they probably are down half of their net wealth they had around the time of this, so they probably still have a few million left. Oswago, do I think Georgia was careful on what she asked Wendy because of her immunity and how well her immunity works if she goes trial? I don't know if that was a reason. It shouldn't have been a reason. You don't have immunity if you lie, and her testimony was pretty much nonstop lying. So they could charge her with perjury as well. Yeah. So for folks that are new to this case, keep in mind that after Professor Markel was murdered, Wendy then changed the boy's last names from Markel to her last name, Adelson, under the guise that, oh, this was a threat to the boys that have that name. And so, unbelievable. They just wanted to exterminate the entire family tree as much as they could. It was so horrific. Donna's been there since November of 2023. She got arrested like less than a week after Charlie was convicted. Keep in mind, neither Donna or her husband Harvey watched any of that trial in person. They stayed down in South Beach. They're afraid of coming up there and supporting their son. And after he got convicted, we heard him on jail tape saying how, on jail phone calls, how they stood by him and there if he needed anything. And meanwhile, they're packing up and getting ready to flee the country for good. LJ's agreeing that the immunity issue is a nothing burger. Georgia's handled it beautifully every time. I didn't think Georgia was tough enough on her questioning and didn't get enough details, especially the first two times. She did a lot better this last time. But there's even more details they could have brought out. Like, I'm just thinking of Wendy's book that she wrote. She basically wrote a book that talked about, very much mirrored things she was hating about Tallahassee and hating about her husband. She actually wrote a book about it years before Dan Markel got murdered. And the topics of that book and things she mentioned in the book were brought out at the last trial. And I think they need to keep that theme going and bring out even more details. Snake Hips, you like to see love to see the boys get into college and contact Markels. Yeah, the boys are super smart, I'm sure. And there is some contact with the Markels, but it's limited. Like, there's no way Wendy would allow the boys to spend 2 weeks without her presence there on a visit to the grandparents. I mean, that's just so much an indicator that she's worried about the boys talking and being unbrainwashed. Just Take Me Dancing. Harvey had impact resistant windows installed recently as public record. I don't know anything about that. Yeah, Dark Knight, they hired Dumb and Dumber to do dirty work. Yeah, there's no way they're going to get this murder to happen without them, with all roads leading back to them. Rainy Day Girl. Someone said that when he just put her stuff into storage, could be a rumor, could be prep for a little one-way trip. I don't know anything about that. John Winger, Wendy's on the front burner now. New info drop. You understand that she has, somebody's mentioned that also, she has put her Florida condo into some kind of trust. So that could be some indicator she's worried about them coming after her. YouTube replied, yeah, they definitely they need to go after her and also charge perjury. Don't hear more about Rob Adelson testifying. That's the honorable doctor, oldest son of theirs, Donna and Harvey's. That's an MD up in the Northeast. I would have him testify. He could say some really damning things against his mom. Hopefully he'll testify when this trial kicks off. VS, did the book really mirror what happened? Well, it didn't mirror exactly what happened because there wasn't a murder in there, but there were so many parallels to the way she hated Tallahassee and the way she hated her husband that really did jump out. And she referenced a play, some kind of play that a husband got murdered. So she mentioned that in her book. So there's just a lot of eerie parallels. Snake hips. Luis got like 18 years. I think his attorney got him a deal for 18, but he's had to serve like 14 or 15 in the federal system. So he's only going to have to serve like a few years once he gets released from the feds within the Florida system. So yeah, he really got a good deal for cooperating. Miriam, you're asking what the podcast, if you already know Wendy was guilty, the podcast is it. She called her murdered ex-husband her latex instead of late ex-husband, latex husband. California girl, yes, it was bizarre not to see anyone in support of Charlie. No one sitting on his side. Well, in the courtroom there in Tallahassee, you can only sit behind, but from what I had seen when I went down there for closing arguments to join my brother John, this was really weird to see somebody that's charged with murder. He's got no family support there whatsoever. Wendy wasn't there. His sister, and even though she testified, she took off right away. The mother wasn't there. The father wasn't there. It was like he had no support. There was no other friends there that I could tell. Beach Bum, you're saying Charlie had a cousin there. You believe one older man. I didn't see anybody that seemed to want to pay any attention to Charlie. Even though after he got convicted, nobody came up to try to express any kind of sympathy or remorse. He pretty much was like a stranger to everybody there. Normally, you always see that family members, even though they can't get close and hug the defendant because they're tied with shackles and they're kept away from the spectators there. But Charlie, he was there with nobody. Yeah, Trace Smith. Wendy drove by Dan Markel's house where he's gunned down his garage. About, I think it was less than 90 minutes, about an hour and 10 minutes to an hour, 20, 30 minutes after he was gunned down. She happened to drive by the house and the cops were already there. Then she hurries up and makes a 3-point turn and gets out of there. And this was way out of the way as well. So that was really a damning, incriminating thing against her. It was so damning that even Charlie on his jailhouse recordings was talking about what are the odds Wendy has to come by right after he's killed? It's like 1 in a million chances. And I think by him making those comments, I think he was not aware of Wendy's plan to do that. That was not part of their script. Mr. Monk, understudy, do I think Charlie was sloppy because he trusts their families protected by the Attorney General? I think he had, yes, the hubris to think that they got the connections through the most powerful judge there in South Florida. And so he was a good friend of Harvey's. So I think they thought they had political cover to protect him. And it did. There was some interference with some strange behavior by the district attorney or state attorney chief at that time to actually make public statements in support of the Markels, the Adelsons. So it's really weird to have this rivalry going on and tension going on with the Tallahassee Police Department and the Adelsons, where they actually were like saying we would get sued if we tried to charge them because there's not enough evidence there, when there actually was enough evidence and it kept on building. So it's really, really strange the kind of protection they got from the previous state attorney. Meggs is his last name. No, John's not a lawyer, but my wife is. John's a pilot, yep. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now so I can get some other stuff done. And I'll jump on some later tonight. And we'll go from there. If you guys want to follow the Karen Reed case, I plan on doing that, like I say, at 7:12, probably 9:30, 10 o'clock-ish, so a little over 2 hours. So I have time to get some stuff done with Leslie beforehand. So hope to see you all then. And meanwhile, take care. Thank you.